A professional juggler is on his way to a gig when he gets pulled over by a police officer because of his taillight being out. Police officer looks in the car and sees all this lighter fluid and matches and goes, what's all this stuff? Juggler goes, I'm a juggler and I juggle torches. Police goes, oh yeah? Show me. So he gets out and he lights the stuff up and he starts masterfully juggling this. Well, while he's doing this, this couple is driving by, looks over and is just amazed by what they're seeing. And the husband goes, wow, I'm so glad I gave up drinking. Look what they make you do now. Receptivity prayer. Say it together. I am open to the evolution of my soul. Heart is alert. My heart is receptive. My next step is here and now. All right. So today, I want to talk to you about not letting religion get in the way. Because many folks are wounded by the religions they come from. You hear all the time about recovering Catholics, recovering Protestants. But the thing about religion is, no matter what the religion, there are others who have been lifted by it. There are others who have seen miracles through it. And so when I was putting this talk together for you guys, I did some research. Go figure. On the etymology of a couple of words, those being religion and dogma. Religion, originally from the ancient Greek, respect for the sacred. That was its original meaning. Simply respect for the sacred. I like that. Well then, in the 5th century, it morphed to monastic life. So then it just applied to those folks who lived in monasteries. Well then, it morphed again in the 11th century to mean a place and obligation on of the bond between humans and gods. Now we're getting sticky. But luckily, where it landed in the 13th century and the way that religion is still defined today is simply a system of worship. That's all it is. A religion is a system of worship. Now, here's the thing. Every single religion that has ever existed started out by somebody having a spiritual experience and then wanting to have it again. So what they did is they put together what's called dogma, and I'm going to get to dogma next, to say this is how that spiritual experience happened, and put together a system of worship, which is the definition of religion. So for those who think, I am not going to be a part of any religion, all I'm going to do is go sit by a creek and meditate, I want you to know that that is a system of worship. In fact, that's one of the oldest systems of worships on the planet. Could you turn me up a little bit, Christine? I'm watching some folks have a problem here. Can you guys hear me all right? All right. That's better now? All right. Even if you're just sitting by a creek, that's a system of worship. Goes back thousands of years to what's called earth religions and shamanism. No matter what it is you do, if you do it on a regular basis, it is a system of worship, thereby a religion. So it would behoove us to get over our ideas about bad religion, because somebody started that religion by having a spiritual experience. Now I'm going to get into the word dogma. This too has a very interesting history. From the ancient Greek, that which one thinks is true. That's all. To seem good was a dogma. That morphed in the 17th century into philosophical tenet. Now, every religion has philosophical tenets. We do right here. Some of our tenets are change your thinking, change your life. Another philosophical tenet is there is a power for good in the universe and we can use it. Another philosophical tenet we have is that we are divine beings. So philosophical tenets, they're in every religion, and they're based on what it takes to have a spiritual experience. Here's what happened next, though, in the next morph of dogma. It changed into enforced decisions such as those of aggressive political interests or religious authorities. This is where the problem came in. Enforced decisions. Now, the most interesting part of enforced decisions is if you've had a spiritual experience, the last thing you want to do is come up with an enforced decision around it. Because that's never, anybody who's had a true spiritual experience, I know many of you in this room have, know for yourself that what got you there was no enforced decision. It was actually a letting go, a taking in of faith. And so when somebody has that experience, no matter what it is they believe, they have risen above the enforced decisions of religious authorities. In fact, what I've noticed is when I look at religious leaders, and I'm going to put that in quotes, people who have moved into power, who have dogmatically gone after fire and brimstone and telling you how it has to be, those are not the folks who have actually had the religious experience. Those are not the folks who have actually touched on the divine. Because anybody, no matter what religion you're in, who has touched on the divine knows very well that it's simply filled with love, compassion, and a connectedness to all things. I have traveled this country before I was a senior minister here and listened to many ministers talk about who tout the difference between our centers for spiritual living and other denominations. Like we have some special connection to God that nobody else has. We have a covenant that like we're the chosen people. I mean, but that's what the Christians say. That's what the Jewish folks say. Certainly, that's what the Muslims say. Everybody wants to think they got a corner on the market on this, when in actuality, that isn't the case at all. What's really going on is those in any religious base who have fully embodied what it is they are believing in have miracles occur. Have something happen that goes beyond the physical, that it comes down to something that is not dogma but fact. What you embody manifests. That is not dogma, it is fact. There was a study done about health and well-being. It turned out the group that has the lowest health and well-being are atheists. They have the highest rate of depression as a group. The next group are those who call themselves spiritual but are not connected to a community. Because we are social creatures. And so finding others who believe similar to you, coming together with those people, is what brings out the health and well-being of that spiritual nature that we want to feel. So if you're just going off by yourself and you think that's going to get you there to that place of health and well-being, study after study shows that you will not. The next part, the higher health and well-being, those people who really thrive are those who are part of any faith-based organization. And it doesn't even matter which one. But I'm not talking about the folks who just show up on Sunday, and I'm not even talking about the folks who go out thumping door to door. I'm talking about those who get involved and truly embody the faith that they believe in. And when they do, their lives rise. And that's the heart of our dogma here too. But here's the thing. Our dogma starts out as a philosophical tenet. But the second we go into a place of we're better than, because we believe that Jesus is the great exception instead of we believe he's the great example instead of the great exception, we lose that dogma has now shifted from a physical tenet to an enforced decision by our very nature of superiority around it. This is a really important piece to get here today that I bring to you, is that what you embody manifests, whatever it is you want to believe in. You know, there are folks who believe in angels, believe in crystals, and they won't come here and share any of that because they're afraid of that it goes against the fact that we know that we are divine and what we embody manifests, and it comes straight out of here. In China, after 42 years of the government killing off as many religious people as they could, religious leaders, anybody who wanted to gather, anything like that, after 42 years, there has been a resurgence began that is to this day led to hundreds of millions of Chinese gathering in churches around the country. So large a spiritual revolution that is beyond the government's ability to control it. No matter how we try to flatten out, make this about science, make this about what you can prove, we have something in us that needs more, that needs a spiritual nature, that needs to gather with others to do so. Because it's not like these folks are doing it at home by themselves. They're going out and joining with others. In whether it's Catholic, Presbyterian, Lutheran, whatever, all these churches are now thriving in China. Because throughout history, every time an empire has tried to strike down a religion and kill those peoples off, whether it be Shiites or Muslims, whatever it is, it rises again. So it is what we embody that brings forth the miracles. It is what brings forth what it is we truly care about. So I heard a story about a Muslim college student who's living in a small town. College was in a small town. She goes and has dinner with her friends, and they're having so much fun. She winds up staying way later than she thought. So it's well after dark, and she needs to get home. And she goes into prayer about her own safety, knowing that she is safe, whole and complete, gets home safely. One of the places she has to walk through to get home is through an alleyway. So once again, she goes into a deep place of knowing, calling Allah to protect her. Walks through that alleyway, and there's a man in there, big man. And she walks right by him, goes home, goes to bed. She finds out the next day that a woman was raped in that same alleyway 20 minutes after she was there. She calls the police, says, I was in that alleyway 20 minutes before. I can recognize that guy who was there then. And so she does the drawing for them. They drew a drawing, and they actually find the guy. They put him in a lineup. She picks him out of a lineup. The second she picks him out of the lineup, he breaks down and confesses. And so the cops are like thrilled. And so they say, can we do anything for you? And she goes, well, the one thing I want to know is why he didn't attack me. And so they go and they ask the guy, why didn't you attack the girl that walked through there 20 minutes earlier? And he says, because there were two large men with her. That's a miracle. Now, why am I sharing this miracle with you? Because I want you to turn Muslim? No. Because I want you to see that it's not about what you believe, it's about how you believe. How deeply can you get into that no doubt, calm assurance place, whether you're believing in Jesus, Allah, crystals? I don't care. I care how you believe. I care that you go deep enough into what it is you believe, so because miracles is the game. We don't want to live normal, mundane lives. We want to rise to something higher. Be who we have come here to be. Hey, you want a dogma that I recommend that is not an enforced decision, that says something that's worth rising to? How about Gandhi's saying of be the change you want to see in the world? Now, there is a philosophical tenet I will follow any day of the week. Be the change you want to see in the world. Now, if you want to be that change, you've got to be willing to dive deep into your own doubt, flush it out, and rise to something higher in yourself to then see miracles. We don't have a monopoly on miracles here in our denomination. Every denomination has them. What we have is a physical, where we can see this. We can see why. What is going on? How is this happening? It's not the belief. It's in how they're believing. So I heard about this man, an African, who contracted AIDS. And so he's in the hospital in Africa dying. This is back in the 80s when people still died of AIDS. And he was not a religious man, never opened a Bible. But now that he was so sick and all, somebody gave him a Bible, he decides to read it. And he comes upon a quote in Psalms that talks about opening to Jesus and that Jesus will forgive all his sins and that he will then be healed. And he starts getting into this. I mean, really into this idea. And he looks back at his life and all the sins he did, and he starts asking forgiveness, and he goes deep into prayer, and he goes deep into a no-doubt place that Jesus can actually heal him. And sure enough, one day, the doctor comes in, looks at him and goes, "You look better. What's going on?" So they retest him, and the test comes back negative. He no longer has AIDS. The medicines at that time didn't do it. So he was so moved by all this, of course he became a preacher. And he's been preaching for the last 28 years. This is what's possible if you let Jesus save you. But I know it's not because Jesus saved him, it's because he believed Jesus saved him. Because it's all about our belief, how deeply we're willing to take it in. So we want to open. We want to open to anyone who is walking their talk, no matter what their religion, because they are inspiring. People who actually walk the teachings of Jesus are inspiring people. People who walk in the true Muslim faith of being that full submission to God. They're inspiring. People who open to what in Native American is called the hollow bone are inspiring. I am so dedicated to our teachings here. I take them with me wherever I go and do everything I can to embody it. So I'm sitting in a sweat lodge with some really big sun dancers. And sun dancers, as I've said before, are the guys who really get, they really get hooked to the tree. I mean, they still do that stuff. And they have to rip themselves off right through their skin, right? So I'm in a sweat lodge with these sun dancers who really know pain and have power. And the door comes down and it's pitch black and they're pouring the water and they're pouring the water. And I'm just sitting there knowing that I'm fine, that I have that divine gift within me, knowing our teaching and taking it in deeper and taking it in deeper to where all of a sudden I'm not feeling the heat at all. In fact, I'm thinking to myself, it's not very hot in here. Did the rocks not get hot enough? I start actually questioning whether the problem is with the rocks not being hot enough. And then when the door goes up, these huge guys are all flat on their faces, staring at me, who's sitting there like, what? In awe, because I'm the guy who actually transformed through the heat. That clearly must have been something, given that every single other person in there was flat on the ground. But that's what's possible when we take in belief to its no doubt place. Whatever it is you believe, that's what you want. You want to take it in that deep. And you want to look to others who are doing that with whatever faith they have. In Texas, there was a bomb at Victoria, Texas. A Muslim was set on fire, bombed, brought to the ground. The Jewish and Christian communities got together, gave them a place to hold services. Did I mention the church that went down was Muslim? Just want to make sure I threw that in. Okay. The Jewish and Christian communities came together, gave them a place to hold services, and helped them raise $1 million to rebuild their mosque. That is unity. That is looking out for each other. That is rising above religion. That is rising above God as a word, Allah, whether Jesus is the Savior or the example. It's rising above, and that's what we need to do here. We don't want to create new dogma by looking down on others who believe different from us. We want to have philosophical tenets that help us all rise. When we come together unified as the basis of religion being the spiritual awakefulness that we all know carries love, carries caring, carries compassion. Those are the things that matter. It's not what you believe, it's how you believe. We never want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Sure, let's throw out the bathwater. Let's turn away from enforced decisions. Let's turn away from what doesn't work for us. But then let's hold on to what does. Those folks who are dedicated not to something superior, but to an open heart, to a knowing that there's something larger than ourselves, to knowing that there's more going on than meets the eye, and that each of us has to believe in that more in our own personal way, and yet come together. I am so glad that you folks come together so that we can and share the system of worship that I believe in, so that we get to share this together and have this community. And I am so grateful for all the communities throughout the world who are doing everything we can to unify, to create a world that is being the change we want to see in the world. This is what we're all after. And we can do it not by looking at the differences, but by looking at how we're all the same. And taking the word God, Allah, Great Spirit, anything that starts getting us cringing and open to the baby and just throw out the bathwater. Let's think of dogma as simply a philosophical tenet, and let's think of religion as simply a system of worship. When we hold them that way, we can stand for what anybody rises to do and stand right with them. And in that way, we will create the world we want to see. I love you. All right, take out what you're going to give and hold it in your hand. You want to uncrumple it because this is power. This is God. You want to uncrumple it, hold it in your hand, and anything from $1 to $1 million to certificates of deposit to titles of property, hold it in your hand because it's power. And what we send out returns multiplied abundantly. So let's say this together. God is the source of all supply. Money is God in action. What we give, we receive multiplied abundantly. All that God is, I am, and so it is.